returning to Better for America today is someone who knows all about the crisis that we are facing. Congressman August Pfluger from the 11th Congressional District in the great state of Texas. Welcome back, Congressman.
Thank you so much.
Congressman, when you joined us back in October of 2021, we spoke about the problems at the border, and unsurprisingly, yet so devastating to witness, we are worse off today than we were 1 year ago. In 2022, more Americans died from fentanyl poisoning than all deaths in our military since the end of World War II combined. Why is it that, despite these facts, protecting our southern border is still a partisan issue? And how do your colleagues on the left justify not supporting stronger border policies?
Well, you put it exactly right. It's much worse today than it was just a year ago, 7 months ago. And that's actually hard to imagine. And since Joe Biden has taken office, almost 5 million illegal aliens have entered this country. Hundreds of thousands of gotaways, known gotaways. What about the people that we don't know about? So many thousands of people that are associated and affiliated with criminal organizations, with transnational criminal organizations, terrorists. We had over 100 people just last year who were apprehended that matched the terror watch list, something that took almost a year to even get the Biden administration to publish. And as the chairman of the subcommittee on Homeland Security's Committee for Counterterrorism, for Intelligence, for Law Enforcement, I take it very seriously as part of our Homeland Security's efforts to keep our country secure, something that the administration knows nothing about and doesn't have the political will to do it. And I'll tell you that we could end this podcast right now by saying, if the administration would just do nothing other than let law enforcement, customs officials, border patrol enforce the laws that we have on the books, if they would do nothing, that our border would immediately be more secure than it is right now. What a shame and what a tragedy. The Democrats have abdicated their responsibility. They've made it worse. And furthermore, in a hearing that we had last week in McAllen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, that has borne the brunt of this crisis, not a single Democrat showed up to join us in talking to Border Patrol agents and understanding the problems of fentanyl, terrorism, and crime.
That is absolutely inexcusable. It's so senseless and really mind-boggling that we have an executive branch that allows this to occur. And I know that all Americans see this, especially our over 2 million AMAC members, which tells me that those on the left are really aware of it too. And as you say, are intentionally just not doing the job that the American people put them in office to do. How do we fix this, sir? What needs to be done?
Well, this is exactly why we traveled to Texas, why we had a field hearing on border security. And it was important because we actually had the chief of Border Patrol, Raul Ortiz, who has worked for many administrations, who has been a Border Patrol agent for over 30 years. Republican and Democrat alike, he's seen it all. This is the worst in his career. It's the worst in anyone's career. But here's what he told us that was important. We asked him if we had operational control of the southern border, if the border was secure. I want to remind people, multiple times to Capitol Hill, multiple hearings, Secretary Mayorkas has told Congress under oath that the border is secure. Last week, Chief Ortiz said, absolutely not. We don't have control of the border. It's not secure. In fact, in 60% of the southern border, it is completely unsecure. This was really important. That's the first step, is at least getting the administration, an official in the administration, to admit that it's not secure. Yes, we have legislation. We are going to pass a border security bill that will include many pieces and parts. It's going to start with the resources that our Border Patrol agents need. It's going to make sure that we address the mental health issues that they have. 17 Border Patrol agents committed suicide last year. This is a tragedy that doesn't get the attention and doesn't receive the appropriate resolve that it should. But we're going to focus on that. We're going to make sure that the quality of life of the agents who are standing up to sacrifice their own lives, in some cases, their families who are sacrificing, that we treat them with respect and we give them the resources to protect. Number two, we have to make sure that any NGO out there who is receiving federal dollars is not making the problem worse. And we have a hunch that that may be the case in some areas. So we've got to stop this pull factor, either from NGOs or from the Biden administration, messaging to cartels and traffickers that our border is open. It's not. And we're going to shut it down because it's causing chaos and crime in communities that I live in and across the country. And third, we are going to hold the administration accountable. We are going to make sure that they know that we're serious, that it is their job, as the Constitution outlines, to uphold the rule of law, the laws that Congress makes, not to ignore them, but to uphold them. Those are the steps that we need to take. This has been a problem for many decades, but it's much worse now because they've abdicated their responsibility in those areas.
Yes, and we see how this affects our economy, our jobs. We see crime soaring, among so many other things. And you, as you mentioned, you do serve on the counterterrorism, law enforcement, and intelligence subcommittees. And I was surprised that the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability hadn't, in other words, only recently was there a hearing, which was a wonderful thing entitled "On the Front Lines of the Border Crisis," which was a hearing with chief patrol agents. But last Congress, Democrats did not hold a single hearing on this national security crisis at the border, which was shocking to me. So I do pray that we see some good things come out of those hearings. But aside from the border, the Biden administration has become a complete disaster. We see wokeism is driving their entire agenda. And it seems that merit-based hiring has gone out the window in favor of making sure that every woke box is checked when they appoint someone to a leadership position. I think it was you who brought to light Biden's nominee to lead the Federal Aviation Administration. And as you mentioned, Biden's nominee did not have the experience needed. We see this over and over again, sir. What do you make of Biden's performance as it relates to choosing people who qualify for positions based on merit?
If you tried harder to choose less qualified people, you might not succeed. He has chosen people, whether it's Department of Transportation. We have a secretary who completely ignored the massive crisis in East Palestine and Ohio that affected hundreds of thousands of people. President Trump went down there before the Secretary of Transportation, Buttigieg, went down there. And then, you've mentioned something about this merit-based approach. There is no longer a merit-based approach for the Democrat Party. Instead, they use diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm sorry, but when it comes to flying airplanes, when it comes to being a secretary, when it comes to being a professional, a doctor or a nurse or a teacher, you have to be qualified. It has nothing to do with where you came from, with what you look like, with the language that you spoke as a child. It has everything to do with working towards the credibility that's required. And nowhere is this more apparent than leading the Federal Aviation Administration that's responsible for the safety of thousands, millions of passengers every year. I think Mr. Washington, who was nominated to lead this agency, had 2 years of experience at the Denver airport, and that was in some relegated administrative post. That's not good enough. The safety of Americans, not just in the air, but the ones on the ground. Think about urban areas where airplanes, could collide or could crash. The safety of so many millions of Americans rests in the hands of somebody who has to be qualified. And we've had enough. We've had enough of the nominations for these posts where there is no qualification, where there is no merit-based consideration. And we're standing up to it. This is one example. We're not going to get the whole, take care of the whole problem today or tomorrow, but we're going to start working on it one bite at a time. And we're starting with this post.
We sure have had enough. And it's interesting to see how conservative Americans have handled the blunders from this administration, the massive mistakes that they've made. I think conservatives have sort of taken a laugh through the pain approach. We see memes and clips of Biden and Harris gaffes that are appearing throughout social media regularly. But in all seriousness, this administration is doing damage at such an alarming rate. So as someone inside the walls of government, share with us and be honest, please. Tell us how serious and dangerous the path we are on and where do you see it leading to? Finally, hope for America's future before we let you run, because there's got to be light in the future and good things to come, I pray.
Well, I don't mean to smile at the question because it is a serious question, but I hope I've been honest and forthright in the answers because I'm very passionate about the questions you've asked. So I appreciate this conversation very much. I'm so concerned about the path we're on. I'm so concerned about all the legacy we have in this country of what our ancestors have worked so hard, the blood that has been shed in multiple world wars, the blessings that we have here in this country, and that they're being thrown away. They're being thrown away for made up things like DEI that I just mentioned. You know, everyone in this country deserves to live the American dream. But it's not the government's responsibility to pull you through that dream. It is our responsibility as an individual to be a good citizen, to be a law-abiding citizen, and to live your own version of the American dream. And that's what this country affords. And instead, the government, under the Democrat rule, under Joe Biden, have taken an approach that is exactly the opposite. And they are making people more dependent upon the government, which is the opposite approach that our forefathers established the Constitution in this country in the spirit of being able to have freedom, but that freedom comes with the responsibility of living in a certain way, which is according to the law. And at the end of the day, the result of this approach is only failure. And it only ends the American dream for all of us if we continue down this approach. And it's because we don't have our eye on the real threats. And those real threats include China and their desire to have not just regional hegemony, but also worldwide domination of everything. They include things like taking good, reliable, and inexpensive energy sources away in the name of some climate religion that does nothing to actually help the climate. These are the things that we're fighting every day. And I'm worried about, as somebody who served in the military for over 2 decades, who saw combat in the Middle East, who was deployed all around the world, I'm worried about the actual survival of our country if we don't maintain focus on the real threats instead of having the Biden administration create crisis after crisis that we have to go put out that's dragging us away from actually doing the things we need to. So that's a long answer, but I'm going to tell you why I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because we made a commitment to America. We are 3 months in to having the gavel, to having a Republican speaker. We are measured. We are realistic. We are focusing on Americans. We are putting values back into the family and instilling the importance of how important the family actually is to this country. And we're going to continue to do that every single day. And you're going to see the proof in the legislation that we are passing by putting bills on the president's desk and making him choose between crazy, which are the policies we saw for the last 2 years, or realistic and right, which are the policies that we are putting forth every single day in this Congress.
Congressman Pfluger, we thank you so much for your courageous leadership. We thank you for serving our country. Thank you for your bold ideas and your vision for the future. We need more great men like you helping us to right the ship and get back to making America great. There's so much that we need to focus on. I love that you mentioned the family, too. That's an area that's very near and dear to my heart, my family. And when I see what's happening to our children, it breaks my heart. The left wants to take away that dignity that every American deserves. And so we thank you for leading the fight. You are a true friend to this podcast, to AMAC, and to America. God bless you, and thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. God bless, and God bless to everyone in AMAC.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen to more just like it. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, or by downloading the AMAC app. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful evening.